Hi everyone. Well, this is one of the reasons I never want to be known as an influencer. So have you heard about the Sunwing airline party flight to Mexico, where it was an invite-only booked trip run by a company, A11 or A111 or something, James. I'm not going to run their names through the mud, but it was a private event where it was invited influencers, quote, influencers, and social media and reality TV stars, like some people in Quebec here in Canada who were part of kind of their version of like Love Island, that kind of reality TV stars. So basically a whole bunch of pretty people. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. You know what? Sunwing can get some advertisement. The company can get some advertisement. That's running the event. The hotels can get some advertisements, some good pictures on social media. Hey, look, everyone's having fun here in Cancun, Mexico, and we're all having a good time. That's huge, huge influence out there in especially a young crowd who's looking to party in Mexico and Cancun on spring break and things like that. This makes perfect sense. It's a very good marketing ploy to have this kind of event go on. What's not good news is what happened on that particular flight from Montreal, Quebec to Cancun. 180 people on that plane. And let's be clear, it's not 180 people who took part in this. So some people are getting wrapped up into this who did none of this on the ship. But the plane got out of control. There was widespread drinking on board. People were vaping on board. They all gathered in one area of the plane, like a huge group of like 30, 40 people, all moved up to the front and were taking selfies with each other. And if you ever know anything about planes and everything, there's a reason they said, please don't congregate in one area, including the bathrooms. And it just seems like, oh, by the way, they pulled all their masks off and they were passing out bottles of vodka that some people had snuck on board, this kind of thing. It was completely out of control. Completely out of control. And the big thing about influencers are we're not very smart, apparently. Oh, crap. I just called myself an influencer by saying we. They're not very smart sometimes because they're filming and posting and taking selfies and putting it on Instagram and Snapchat and YouTube and Facebook. Everything they're doing. So there's evidence. There's photographic evidence and video evidence out there. And so let's just say people have not been very happy with the events on that ship. First of all, they put the plane in danger by their behavior. They flaunted the rules. They partied on a plane. And the runner of the person who was running the event, James, first tweeted out, said, hey, you know what? We followed all the instructions by Sunwing. Then he quickly, the next day, once it started to spread, put out a different tweet saying, I take this very, very seriously. A simple party on a plane turned into all this hype. And I will take a moment to figure out what's going on and figure out how to do better next time. Well, here's an idea. Don't party on the plane, James. Cancun's the place to party. When you arrive at the hotel, that's the place to party. Planes are not a place to party. Maybe that's your first rule you should learn. And by the way, a simple party on a plane is not a simple party on a plane. It's irresponsible. Grow up, man. Okay, so I got that rant out of my way. Wow. But anyway, these influencers who have been now run through the media, lots of media here in Canada, and saying, even the Prime Minister in a press conference on Wednesday came out and said, yeah, these people are morons. I'm going, you know what? I don't agree with the Prime Minister very often, but I'm agreeing with him in this particular situation. You know what? When I cruise, when I travel, I love to have a good time. But I know where it's appropriate and where it's not appropriate. On a cruise ship, in the bar, in a dance hall, in the theater, that's the place to have a good time. On my plane, it's not the place to, it's a place to make sure we get there safely and respect other people. And apparently that was, kind of out the door for a few people. But now they're finding themselves in a whole lot of trouble. First of all, some of them now, here's a surprise, everybody. You know what? When you take your mask off and you're on a plane and you're partying together and you're close contacts and everything, you might get COVID. And guess what? Some of them have now tested positive for COVID after getting off the plane. Surprise! That's a shocker, right? That's an absolute shocker. Okay, so they test positive. They're isolated in the hotel. Not only that, Sunwing canceled the return charter. They said, sorry, we're not flying this group back because of the flaunting of the rules and the endangerment of the crew. I have a little bit to say some stuff on Sunwing's part in all this, but for now we'll concentrate on the event. So now they can't fly home, at least with Sunwing. No problem, you think. No problem. You know what? It's going to cost a little bit of money. It's inconvenient. Maybe we'll sue Sunwing for not flying us back when we go back. What are we going to do? We're going to go and, we're going to go to Air Canada. Air Canada said, hey, we saw the pictures. We saw what you did. We don't want you on our flights. Air Transat, we don't want you on our flights. A lot of them are still stuck in Mexico, paying for hotel rooms now, because the airlines are refusing to fly them home. Well, I guess you can jump in the car and drive the 60 hours from Cancun, Mexico, all the way home. I hope you can afford to do that on your influencer salaries. As an influencer, if you classify me as an influencer, you can't. Trust me. So, yeah, a lot of them are finding that that's not the way to go. And some of the influencers now saying, hey, you know what? We weren't part of that. We were sleeping. We saw what was going on. It wasn't right, but hey, don't lump us into that group and everything. Here's the trouble. When an event like that happens on a plane, you do get lumped in with a bunch of people. You do get lumped in with that group. And so it's not right. It's not right. But that's the risk. When you see a bunch of people doing stuff that's irresponsible, especially on an airplane, I don't know what they could have done, though. Would you have stood up and said, hey, guys, you better settle down? You would have been booed off the plane and criticized the rest of your trip, right? So I don't know what they could have done, but I do know what the crew could have done. And here's where I go with Sunwing. The crew lost control of that plane. Once they started gathering, you saw them vaping on the plane. You saw them passing around bottles. You saw them pulling their masks down and disregarding all the rules. The pilot immediately should have asked for an emergency landing. They should have landed anywhere along the route, and those passengers should have been removed and fined. Instead, you kept flying. Now, what would have happened after drinking and everything? One of those passengers decided, hey, you know what might be fun? It might be fun if we play with the door and pretend we're going to open the door. Ha, 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 everybody, take a picture of me. I'm going to open the door and crash the plane. Ha, 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 ha. Morons. And the flight crew, you should have stopped it. You should have landed the plane. You should have had the authorities waiting there at the thing. You could have landed anywhere and told, we're about to arrive in Cancun, everybody. Fasten up. They would have fastened up. You would have arrived. And there would have been the authorities, wherever you are, New York City, ready to arrest them and fine them. As it is now, they're facing up to $5,000 fines for the violations they've done already, not to mention their expenses that they're going to incur not being able to fly back home to Canada on the return flight, because a lot of them actually had this paid for them by the event organizer. This was a free trip as a like an advertising thing, a promotion thing. Well, that free trip might turn into thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars, because the federal government now has launched an investigation here in Canada into the whole event, and each of those passengers who took down their mask, who smoked on the plane, who snuck alcohol on the plane, all the things that you did wrong, guess what? You could have and face, and also apparently there's some rumor, some passengers have said they saw people using Vaseline and coating the inside of their nose to try and thwart the COVID test procedures as well. Well, if all that's true and all that happens, they could face fines up to $750,000. That's right, your free trip might have just cost you $750,000. And if you think no, they're never going to get fined that way. 2 American citizens at the beginning of the COVID pandemic lied to authorities and snuck into Canada and had fake COVID status and all that. They were fined $100,000. So yeah, there are fines that high. And imagine you being in the social media and being any kind of a reality star or something like that, and you're in the headlines for doing this, and they launch an investigation and there's proof that you did any of this, you're going to be hit with a fine. And if you did do any of this stuff on that plane, you kind of deserve what you get. Because if that's the kind of person who's influencing other people, they need to be shunned when they do stuff like this. And an apology video, or an apology where they're, I'm sorry, I didn't know this would cause such a fuss. We don't need to do that. Tell you what, make a real apology, make an effort to go out there and say that you did something very, very stupid, and then maybe you should be forgiven. And I know it's fun to party when you're young. This is a bunch of young, pretty people. Just want to have fun. But an airplane is not the place to party.